Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable Show. This is episode 525. We record this on every Friday around 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's August the 27th, 2020. Got a great panel. I think it's going to be a great show. I'm going to let my co-host on my interview show introduce himself, Adrian. Adrian, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Adrian. I am the CEO and founder of Groundhog. We help small businesses that use WordPress launch their funnel, grow their list, and scale their business with proven digital marketing automation CRM tools.
And I've got my friend, John Locke. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. John Locke. I do SEO for manufacturing firms.
Yeah, he's a farmer of chickens as well. And I've got Uncle Spencer with us. Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself?
You know, it's episode 525. It seems like just yesterday it was episode 524. My, how far you've come. This show has been around for a long time, John. I got to tell you.
It's like a virus. It won't go away.
It is. It's just, it's like the second coming of the Jonathan virus part 2. Spencer Foreman from launchflows.com.
Yeah, it's a bit like Adrian. The longer he's my co-host, the more serious he looks. There you go. Oh, there we got a smile, actually. We've got a smile. Stephen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Stephen Sauter from zipfish.io. We specialize in making WordPress fast.
That's great. And I've got my friend Sally. Sally, would you like to introduce yourself? The token lady.
That's right. Sally Gatch, experienced token woman.
What's it like to be a token? Sorry.
Oh, well, gosh, Jonathan. Have you ever been in a space where you were the only person like you?
It was obvious. There's only one me.
Yes, dear. But for instance, I was asked to speak at a women in consulting or something like that event, and my husband came with me, and it was, there were probably a couple hundred people there, and of them maybe 5 were men. And himself felt super self-conscious the entire time on account of being so outnumbered.
Well, there you go. I'll just be happy.
And it's like,
when you get to my age, you've got 5 ladies round you. You're just happy. See, that's the
so you have to understand that this is what people face going into any space where they are the different and noticeable one and have to represent not just themselves, but, I'm not qualified to speak for every woman on the planet.
Oh, you do a fantastic job, actually, Sally. You do a fantastic job.
I have opinions, as far as the eye can see, but those are my opinions. I do not claim to speak for everyone female.
Right, there we go. So before we go into our first stories, I just want to mention one of our great sponsors. Been sponsoring the show for a couple of years now. That's Kingster Hosting. Kingster Hosting is only a WordPress premier hosting provider, i.e. they only work with WordPress. And if you're working with a client or you're looking for a great hosting provider yourself, you get everything you're looking for. If you've got a learning management system, WooCommerce, anything where you need premier WordPress hosting, Kingster is the choice you should look at. And they provide all the bells and whistles, latest version of PHP, one-click backup, and a fantastic UX design, and also fantastic support as well. So if that's interesting for you or your clients, go over to Kingster, buy one of their packages, and also tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. So into story 1. Apple apologizes to WordPress. Won't force the free app to add purchases after all. What did you think of this one, Spencer?
I found it interesting because I'm a house full of kids who play Fortnite. And I don't know if you guys know of the producer of Fortnite is Epic Games, and they're a multi-billion-dollar company. And if you don't know what it is, it's one of those, every kid under the age of something plays, and many adults. Although I don't happen to play that, I understand the draw of it. it's a multi-billion dollar game. So anyway, what happened is they started out, many people played on iPad and iPhone, so they have a version of it for iOS, as well as Android, as well as, Xbox and PC and so forth. Long story short, just like with some other people, including the co-founder of Basecamp, they said, wait a second, Apple, this 30% is a crock of shit after you're a little developer, because we're bringing in billions of dollars and hundreds of millions are going through your store and you're taking a third of it, right? So David Hennemeyer Hansen from Basecamp came out on this about their new Hey app, Hey email thing we talked about the other week. So they were the first ones, again, just like I hope Elementor will be in the space of WordPress, to say, hey, which finger am I holding up behind this hand here, Apple? Because we're not going to give you 30% anymore. And so there's a showdown. And I love this. This is quite exciting to me, because what's essentially happening is every company worth its weight is now going to do the same thing to Apple. Interestingly enough, somehow Mullenweg and his cohorts figured out a way to weasel out of the controversy and get a pass. Whereas Epic Games, who's a multi-billion-dollar company, and of course the founders of Basecamp didn't get a pass. And you're going to see the cracks in the foundation of Apple's argument. Why? Because in the Sherman and the Clayton Acts and all the other previous historical antitrust stuff, you cannot do favoritism. You cannot have a monopoly and then show favoritism to this company over that company over there, because that's the definition of being monopolistic. And so I think Apple has bought themselves a very interesting problem here, because giving a pass to WordPress is just completely validating David Hennemeyer Hansen's case and giving all the evidence that Epic needs to show that this is BS. And the usury part of it is interesting as well, because when you look at what happened with Apple, back when the iPhone was created, nobody imagined billion-dollar games on the iPhone store, right? Or the iPad store. But like literally, all they're doing is providing a billboard, and they're taking, hey, how about you give us like a third of your money over here? Because like we're doing you a big favor.
Give us your money.
It would be too bad if something happened to your app. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I might break your leg.
Isn't there a big difference?
Go on, Stephen. Go on. Yeah.
Sorry. Isn't there a big difference, Spencer, though, between what Facebook was doing and what like everybody else is mad about the 30%? Like that Facebook actually, or not Facebook, sorry, WordPress was actually.
Well, they're both the same, really.
But WordPress wasn't selling things in app, right? Like you couldn't buy anything in app, right? Where Fortnite is saying, buy things in app with our credits that you're paying through a third system. Like from a legal perspective, I guess like to me that feels like a big difference, but I haven't done very much.
Right. Except that if you've looked at the details, and there's Sarah Gooding writes a piece about this in the Tavern that's kind of a follow-up that says, on the surface, it seemed Apple was forcing a free app to add in-app purchases solely to extract a 30% cut of the revenue. The problem was if users drilled down deep enough into web help pages, they could find a window to escape the walled garden. Right. And essentially somewhere buried deep in the iOS app was a way to like pay for Jetpack services outside of the Apple store. And so, Apple apologized, but also Mullenweg agreed to take that out of the app. Right. And so, it was not a straight win necessarily for WordPress. Now, personally, I think the WordPress users win if that shit is taken out of the app. And there have been a lot of people saying, hey, we have to keep separate the .org and the .com stuff. And this is messing us up.
What do you reckon, Adrian?
Well, on the subject of favoritism, I mean, it falls apart where Jeff Bezos gets 15% instead of 30, right? That's kind of really where the argument falls apart in terms of we treat all developers the same. Well, then why did Prime Video get 15 instead of 30? Exactly. That's no behavior, right? That's sus. That's pretty shady. So that, I mean, for me, that's where the argument falls apart.
Yeah, but he wants to go to Mars, Adrian. He needs the money.
I guess he needs the extra, right?
He's going to be able to get there on just climbing a stack of dollar bills soon.
Exactly, Look, he's got big ambitions. He wants to go to Mars. He needs the money, agent. That's why he can't pay those workers less than a minimum wage,
That was the deal for, so Apple gave him 15% for launching on iOS first, which was the exclusivity deal that they cut. But if that's not the way that they treat everyone for exclusivity on the iOS for a certain period of time, then that's not equal distribution of 30% tax to all the developers when the we provide a fair and equitable service argument falls apart. In university, when you're proofing something and you're trying to provide a proof is broken and is disproven with exactly one counterexample being able to prove the contrary. So if we were to apply that logic to this situation, that one counterexample is enough to take their whole argument down from top to bottom. Epic was in the wrong because they absolutely violated the terms of service agreement. Hey was not in the wrong because they did not violate anything. They just had a login page, but you had to go to the website to purchase. They did not have any in-app purchases. And then Apple tried to force Hey to say, you need to sign up on your app in order to be listed on iOS store, which is basically extortion. And basically the same thing was going on for the WordPress app at the same time. And both Hey and WordPress won those arguments while Epic is still embroiled in the legal battle of the century. So I guess
we're all very interested to see how they do out of it, because if they can do just as well without it, then...
Oh, they're going to be fine because they published today. They're not taking a passive approach. They're taking a crowdsource approach. I like to call it the how do you fix a troll. You get all your fan people, boys and girls, to go after the troll. So what they've done today is I got an email because of my kid's account of explaining they changed the system now so that normally what happens when I don't know what they call it, but like the game arena, they just updated the game arena, which would leave all the Apple people out. They said to the Apple people, we're making it special that for you get to keep using the old game arena and all the other stuff. And then meanwhile, here's the instructions of what to do. So they're just essentially getting their entire army of fans, of which there's hundreds of millions, I think. It's a real problem for Apple because they can't defend, like Adrian says, they can't defend when the proof is broken or when they violated even one of the antitrust actions.
Takes one case in order to disprove their whole model.
It was there beforehand. So what I find interesting is because this is another argument that I have with a friend of mine who I like, but we get into politics and he's really smart, but he defends the idea that Apple and other corporations into which he's invested his money should not have to pay taxes. And it's a different argument, but it's the same concept that somehow the fact that they spend their money, or Apple or Google or Amazon, that they spend their money on hiring people and building factories somehow means they should be immune from paying taxes. And I say this is
why? Because everybody else has to pay taxes on top of anything else they contribute.
Because his argument is that somehow his investments will go down. I said, or if you take the trillions of dollars of lost tax revenue and all of the Fortune 100 companies all pay real taxes in a real fair way, then point is that this particular case causes them a real problem because they got like $2 trillion banked, okay? And as a former trial attorney, I cannot think of a better client to have than Epic to go after a $2 trillion honeypot, whether it be on a class action suit or a liability suit or whatever.
I'll put it over to
well, yes, and if they're successful, there will be a wave of lawsuits.
Yeah, John, what do you think to finish off, John?
Yeah, first I want to say it's like Spencer, with your friend is completely incorrect about that, because I can tell you from sitting in different meetings before that the cities often give tax breaks to big employers like that. And they actually give companies that are big employers like that tax incentives to come in to different cities. So
look at what happened with the Amazon.
And cities bend over backwards for like a bunch of crappy jobs for Amazon just because they want the
and
tax
the cities
base.
lose.
Yeah.
The cities
do lose. The cities absolutely lose. It's just a prestige thing. But when it comes to this, it's basically you get what you negotiate or you're able to negotiate. In this case, Fortnite, they don't want to pay the 30%, you know, they're big enough to do that. It's kind of like Taylor Swift not going on Spotify. She's big enough to do that. She doesn't need it.
Oh,
But
Taylor
Like
Swift.
Dave Chappelle walking away.
This in there with the angel Taylor Swift. There
Yeah.
we go. Yes.
I want to protest the host for a second too. Like, I think that we should take a consensus. If we have a topic that we're all talking about, I don't feel the imperative after this many shows to rush to the next topic. I would like to beg for a little indulgence if we're all talking about something that we should. It's okay.
But you talk so much, Spencer. This is the point.
You feel sometimes.
Well, you invite us here because we talk so much. It wouldn't be helpful to have a silent
But we must find
panelist.
moderation, Spencer. I don't want to encroach you too much, but sometimes it does.
Sometimes it takes me. I have to lay some foundation. You know, like it's a.
Yes. Well, it's once we start repeating ourselves, it's certainly time to move on.
On to the next story. Your protest is noted. Your protest is noted, Spencer. Facebook Classic look dies in September. So they've been bringing out this new look, this new UX design. What did you know? Have you got it, Stephen? And if you have, well, it's a bit like saying if you got the virus, really. What do you think of the new Facebook design?
I like the Facebook design. So like Facebook oftentimes rolls out its stuff like the part of its users on like an ongoing basis and like or tries new things for different people. I'm notoriously like never the person that gets anything from Facebook. I'm always like the last person that gets updates from a design standpoint. So I'm always sad about that. But I mean, you know what? Things change. Designs change. We're in a modern era. Everything's rolling. Everybody's going to hate it for a little bit, and then soon they'll love it, and wait till they try to change it again, and everybody will hate it again. It's just how life goes.
So, Adrian, what do you think of it?
I switched back.
You switched
I love
back?
everything.
Oh, why did you do that? Why did you do that?
Couldn't find anything.
Well, my husband is complaining.
I've kept with it, but I'm just the same. I can't find nothing.
Well, I hear that it's notoriously difficult to find anything on Facebook anyway. But what my husband says is, now Facebook on my desktop looks just like Facebook on my phone, and all there are some things that are really huge, which is kind of weird, and that basically he doesn't want things on his 27-inch 4K desktop to look the same as things on his phone.
I think you just brought up a really good point there, really. I think that's what they've attempted, and that's why I think it doesn't quite work. I was thinking to myself, am I just suffering because I can't find nothing, so I just want to put it back? And I thought, I'll persist with it, and then I just realised it's the point you've just made. They're trying to unify a design, and I've never thought, and this is one of my problems with responsive design, is that I don't actually believe totally that the same design can work on a large screen as on a medium screen as a really small screen. I've never believed that.
Well, of course, responsive design doesn't keep it the same on the different screens. That's kind of the point of doing it, and especially of doing it well. But it's also
doing it well costs a lot of money, and most clients haven't got a lot of money.
Well, if you start doing it from the beginning, yes, it costs more because your designer has to think about more things, and your dev may have to build more things. But there's also a point that I hear Rachel Andrew and a lot of other people make about equivalent experiences, that you don't have to provide something that's exactly the same if it's working, so that you don't have to you don't have to try to recreate on IE8 what somebody is seeing on the on the latest version of Chrome. You just have to give them something that looks good and is usable.
Yeah. Right. What do you reckon, John? What do you reckon?
Yeah, frankly, I'm a little underwhelmed at this design. And the reason that I'm going to give is there's no visual hierarchy of stuff.
That's another point.
Basically, like your left sidebar with your groups and stuff like that, your main feed in the middle, and then the right sidebar with your messenger stuff. It's all basically very similar, and nothing really stands out. the post now button is like this dull gray. I mean, it's not even like, blue or anything like that, which I think would be like obvious, but it's basically just a mishmash of like everything like blends into one another for me. I switched like about a month ago. I figured they were going to switch it anyway, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. To me, it's pretty underwhelming, and you can't, scan into stuff, what you're trying to find easily. And that's just me.
What do you reckon, Spencer? F minus? B, a C, a B?
I'm using it, but begrudgingly, because I'll tell you, it's part of my wean down on it. But what I think is happening is pretty clear, and the comments note this. They just wanted to stop developing two different formats. So they've just essentially made iPhone for your desktop because it'll look the same on both. And the one comment's like, seriously, I feel like I'm using a 30-inch iPhone in landscape mode. It's effing horrible. It's kind of true, because I'm using the new one now because they sort of gave me the ultimatum of use it. Like you guys said, like Adrian, I can't find much stuff. Some of the stuff doesn't work. I can't hide the context on the right side. It's sort of a pain in the ass. However, I just like, I don't care that much because I'm not a power Facebook user. And what I use it for is mostly to track stuff from launch flows and maybe some personal pictures of things that make people happy, like a dog licking John Locke's face or something. But other than that, I don't use Facebook for...
Bring on the cats. The cats always get me more views.
From a UI perspective, one of the things that I learned about creating applications is that white space is valuable. And white space allows you to clearly identify things that are important and things that are less important. In the old Facebook, the sidebar had no background. It was just whatever the background of the screen was, and you had links over top of it. So you could tell that priority was in the middle of the screen where the post feed were, because all of those had, their little white cards with the white backgrounds and then white space in between. On the new app, everything is white. So you don't have, it's not as easy to define priority because white space has just totally been like removed from the interface whatsoever. So it's hard to identify, like John said, priority as to where your eyes should focus on. Right now I'm in one of my group. I'm just looking at my group. The left sidebar is white. All the posts are white. The context for all of the different group settings is on the right in white, and it's all wrapped in cards, and I have no idea where to look. And you used to be able to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, my husband uses it in dark mode, like everything. And it really is. It's like, that scene in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Every time you press a little black button on a black background, a little black light lights up black to let you know that you've done it.
Like Gutenberg. It's just like Gutenberg. It's just all white on the right side and no separation of anything. And you're just like, every time, wait, what am I looking at? What is this? It's literally the same experience. The other part of it, which I haven't discovered, but I bet is there, and I feel bad about this because I'm of the generation that I know it's there, but it wasn't. We started, remember, with the original iPhone was, what do they call it? Skeuomorphism, where it's supposed to look like a real thing. And that was awesome. But now everything is secret swipes and gestures. And I have a feeling that the desktop has a lot of stuff hidden in there that I just don't know where to find it. But if I was 30 years younger, I would
only available for the Russians.
Or for the Queens.
I'm sorry.
I'm actually gratified that Adrian can't seem to find stuff either, because it makes me also think of PayPal.
Thanks, I thought it was just my age.
Oh God! Every time PayPal changes its interface, it gets worse.
Right? They wrap all their shit with like some new hidden thing.
It's great when you Steve and an agent say they have difficulties as well. It makes me feel better, actually. There we go.
I'm starting to feel like, I don't know. I'm not what I used to be. I was talking to my...
Get used to it, Steve. It only gets worse.
It does not improve, let me tell you.
I was talking to my little nieces, and they were showing me things on the iPhone that I was just like, what the world? Like, at one point in time, I was on top of all this stuff, and everybody was asking me, and like, there was just this moment, like 2 months ago, where I was just like, well, what is happening to me?
Yeah, okay. Well, all right, that's fair enough. What is happening? I think we'll go for a break, and when we come back, I've got some more good stories to delve in. The panel seems excited. Well, they seem to be warming up to it. So we'll be back in a few moments, listeners and viewers. We're coming back. We've had a good first half, had a few digs. I've made a few wise cracks. Adrian didn't laugh at any of them, but there we go. So on we go. But first, I must mention about one of my other great sponsors, and that's WP Fusion. If you've got a relationship manager like email marketing tool like ActiveCampaign, Drip, and you've got a WordPress website, you need WP Fusion. It will put the whole process on steroids. It enables you to do all sorts of crazy automatizations, which will make you love it and also make your clients love you. So I suggest that you go over to WP Fusion, look at all the amazing things you can do with their product, buy one of them and tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. So on to story 3, full site editing in WordPress, lowering barrier to entry, the end of themes. What do you reckon of this one, Stephen?
Oh man, it just feels like it's going to be super messy. Like, you think WordPress feels convoluted and where you're supposed to click stuff. I feel like it's taking, as Gutenberg gets into that space, right? Like where you have all this like non-hierarchical kind of thing. From what I've seen from screenshots, it kind of feels like the same thing, but maybe it's just because everything's moving again and I have to get used to where to click and where everything's at. But from what I've seen from the screenshots, I'm not excited.
It's one of those things where for brand new users who've never touched WordPress, it may not be any more difficult than when we were learning WordPress, but for people who are used to doing it one way, but also, of course, we know Gutenberg is having a lot of growing pains, and you know they have to change the way they've done some things because they can't, you know, because of the other things they're trying to do, and also because of like God only knows what, like hiding the drag handle.
See, I just want to slightly interrupt. I think this is caused because there's definitely different bubbles, different groups in this discussion. If you're somebody that's either got an eye for graphics or thinks you've got an eye for graphic design, and there's some people that actually think they're really good at it and they're terrible. But if they say you do have an eye for graphic design or you're a graphic designer by profession, you probably don't need any preset themes. But I think the bulk of DIY business owners, average, maybe medium to power users, they do need themes.
Well, yes, it is. I mean, it's going to be great for the people like, and I've had clients like this, you know, they want to be able to change every little tiny thing. They want to fiddle with it. They're, you know, they have artistic sensibilities or whatever. And
or they think they do.
Well, in this case, the person has, you know, plenty of artistic skill, but not necessarily a lot of understanding about usability and so on and so forth. And then there are the people who really, they just want to, you know, put the text in and you know, they don't think that way and they don't necessarily want it. But the title of this piece is like sort of one of those fake contradictions, because, you know, that lowering the barriers to entry and the end of themes are not necessarily exclusive, or, you know, the end of themes as we know it. And Spencer's been talking about that for a long time. And I think other people have too, that your theme is, you know, a little bit more than a container with maybe, you know, some fonts and colors and things defined. And then you lay other things out. But, you know, if clients decide, and some of them have, you know, if an end user decides, I want to make the header look different on every page, well, they can do that. You know, their site's going to suffer from it. But, you know, if it's your site and you want to build it that way, well, you know, that's what's going to happen. I'm not going to sit there and do it for you. But
no. So, Adrian, on one of your webinars recently, I think you had the People Buddy Boss on, you know, and they got their theme, and it, you know, but it's a kind of theme application, isn't it? It's a kind of hybrid, isn't it? So, what do you reckon? Because I think the classical theme, well, if you call it, it doesn't really matter. You can either call them templates, themes, whatever. I still think there's going to be a need for them. What do you reckon, Adrian?
Well, I mean, CSS has got to come from somewhere. So I think for the vast majority of theme functionality will be delegated to the style.css file, and possibly just like managing footer widgets, because that's going to be a little bit harder to phase out. So stuff like the footer widgets and the menu, and for example, if you use Astra, the actual page template that's going on. I guess it really remains to be seen. It's coming. It's on the way. So, look forward to it. And when he gets here, you won't be disappointed.
What do you reckon, John?
Yeah, I mean, themes are definitely going to change. I mean, it's not going to be the same. I mean, yeah, it won't be the same. But I don't know that it necessarily lowers the bar. Just because you have things that you can drag and drop and move around doesn't mean that people, the average person, the non-technologically savvy person, can assemble a site that's going to get them somewhere. Or
I guess
do they even have the desire to?
Move and drag and drop to where, right? I guess that's probably the where is going to become, like, the theme will be the context. And then full site editing will allow you to put content within that context. And that's what the theme is really going to be regulated to, is providing that context.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Spencer?
All good points. I think the place I'd focus my energy is on what's underlying this all. The thing that's happening is the metaphor of WordPress being
Conspiracy
here
within the conspiracy.
Can you hear me? It's not a conspiracy if you believe it. There used to be WordPress was here, well, more like a vertical cake, but like there's a layer of a cake. WordPress. Then there was a layer of themes that were completely independently owned and controlled and operated. Then there were plugins, and then there were whatever else you added. What's happening here is that WordPress is moving to get rid of the ability for outside people to control the theme layer and replace the classic editor with something that is a page builder and that acts like part of the core WordPress. Now, does that mean that nobody will be able to do anything? No, it's actually a good thing that that's happening in some ways, because we don't need the theme layer right now. Right now, I have to explain to all my clients, look, use Astra free and don't do anything with it other than maybe individual page stuff. Everything you want to do should be in the page builder layer. And that's further compounded because when you use something like a Buddy Boss framework or you use LearnDash, they're trying to jam their own design. But at WordPress, the good result is that we should have a blank canvas to start with. The problem comes initially, and I kind of agree with what all of you said, and especially Sally, that those of us who are used to having that layer are going to have to scramble to kind of restructure ourselves and our clients to work with, like, WordPress has its own blank canvas by default. And somebody's going to have to, I don't know, make a shortcut plugin to just get past what Gutenberg difficulties are. But here's where it gets interesting. Once that is sorted out, it's my opinion that all bets are off, that the war will be further escalated between those who want to be with Automatic and those that don't. Because once Automatic controls that entire experience, which is what they're doing, Elementor and all the other page builder companies are going to have a bigger struggle to overcome. Like people saying, why do I need to buy Elementor? Why do I need to use a page builder? Because everything is already in there. And if you're a newbie and you've got a budget, you're not going to find any reason to do it. So that sort of will exacerbate this, like, Epic versus Apple, or, you know, Elementor versus WordPress kind of a problem of, hey, where are people going to go if they want to build things a certain way? What I feel is that I would probably go towards the place where all the other third parties are more welcome. And right now, I don't feel that's the direction that WordPress Automatic is going. They're working to exclude things with double standards, the Jetpack. WooCommerce has become this sort of trap of stuff. Even the companies that make stuff for WooCommerce, like Skyverge, have gotten bold enough. Did you notice now, if you use any of the plugins like WooCommerce subscriptions, that Skyverge jams its own interface with email in it into the dashboard? How is that possible? What company is allowed to make a plugin for subscriptions that creates an entirely different interface with email directly to the company in it? Nobody would get away with that if they weren't owned by Automatic. So again, you know, the waves or whatever, the ocean's parting, and you're going to have to probably.
They've always been, being truth, I'm not defending it, but they've always been a bit like that, haven't they? They're always.
It's just a progress towards the goal.
Yeah, they've always been a little bit hypocritical, haven't they?
I mean, you know,
Well,
you saw this.
all humans are at least a little bit hypocritical.
I know I am.
You saw this in other places, like in the years of old when open source Linux stuff. I wasn't a Linux user, but there was a company that essentially made it all good for everybody. And then what happened is somebody commercialized it. I think it was Red Hat. I don't want to misname it. But then there became this whole pissing contest of, but wait, you took my free stuff that I gave to you and you sold it. Now you're making all the money and I'm going out of business. Well, that's what's happening here. The money people are telling Automatic, get your shit and, you know.
No, I think the market is in a flux, but when the market's in the flux, there's going to be winners and losers fundamentally. So there will be opportunities. It's really, you know, I think the theme was essential because it was, unless you were a developer or you had a certain level of CSS, HTML skills, it was hard to do any major manipulation. You know, the editor was quite primitive. But now in 2020, you got the opposite, you know, unless you lock it, you know, in Elementor and in Beaver Builder, you can lock, as the designer, developer, you can lock sections down, can't you? So making them non-editable, you can do that. But it's just a lot more freedom. Where there's freedom, there's responsibility, isn't there?
IBM invested billions of dollars, and others like them invested billions of dollars into the fax machine. And guess what? Nobody sends faxes anymore. So
No, but they made piles of money while it happened.
and that's the same can be same for all of the premium themes out there. Tough. Get with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you find a way to adapt, or you know, or
Adapt or
not.
die.
And you know, I think if you have run your you know, your page builder company in such a way that you know it's been profitable, and you kind of come to the end of page builders, if that's what happens, then you know you're in a decent position to, you know, retire from being a page builder.
Well, I don't even think this
something
is
else.
I actually don't think this is the
But
situation.
I don't know that we're at the end of page builders for quite a long time now.
It's not the end. It's the difference between. You ever heard that theory? I don't know what it's called, but like if you took a human and you replaced their body parts with robotic parts, at what point do you have so many robotic parts that you stop being a human? I'm saying with WordPress, if you replace all of its functions with third-party plugins and page builders, at what point is WordPress more important than the other stuff anymore? I'm saying the waters are parting towards if Elementor and a few key plugins can do 99% of what WordPress can do, and you just need that sort of underlying thing to hold them all, well, that becomes a whole different architecture. Or
because you're talking about, to some extent, a situation like what happens with WordPress with
like all it is a database at that point.
WooCommerce, I meant, sorry.
Well,
WooCommerce.
which could be an interesting avenue for the Elementors and so on, because then they're like, well, then you can use Elementor with Joomla or with Drupal or with anything.
Or with JavaScript. Remember we were talking the other couple of months ago, like you have a new interface that's JavaScript based, Node.js or whatever. So if enough people got together and took that, you minimize the importance of the underlying WordPress core, fork it. Now it's like, which is a better system? The one that does that with the individual third-party components all optimized, or the one that comes from Matt Mullenweg and Where's Otto WordPress? By the way, where is
Otto? This is
the question.
Go on, Stephen.
The question at the end of the day is like, who owns the customer, right? Like that's what we're kind of discussing. Like, does WordPress own the customer? And for a theme, generally, people are a bigger fan of WordPress than they are the theme that they're using. But in cases of like Elementor, just for argument, Elementor has like such a big fan base right now that I would say that there is a good portion of that group that is a customer of Elementor and not a customer of WordPress, meaning Elementor moves, they would move with Elementor and they don't care what WordPress is doing.
For sure.
And that's the place, like where you are, where like this discussion is going, is who owns the customer at the end of the day, because that
Yeah,
customer will follow whoever owns them.
That's why I think the underlying reason.
Yeah, God forbid the customer should own themselves.
I think that's the underlying reason, Stephen, why this discussion has some importance, because that's so. John, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that's basically it. I mean, that exactly what Stephen and Spencer and Sally just said. Definitely, there's some page builders where I don't think page builders are going away yet. I mean, I think for WordPress, that's their goal, because they have to make money, and selling hosting, VIP hosting, is not cutting it. But that's probably their play, is to become like a Wix clone or a Squarespace clone. But I definitely think if a plugin like Elementor went and created their own ecosystem, definitely a lot of design shops would, just keep their clients on it, because I think at the end of the day, most clients.
I don't think the clients care.
No, they do not care.
The parents do not care what the technology is if they get the result they want.
So it's whatever the agencies and consultants choose for them and tell them is the best, and that's basically it.
Yeah, so that's why they're hiring you, for you to work all that out, not for them to work all that out. Right, on to the next story. Google has a plan to disrupt college degrees. So, Adrian, what did you think of this one? I thought it was pretty interesting.
When I worked in the agency, we were hiring a couple Google AdWords specialists, and our only requirement was that they had the Google AdWords certificate. That was the only prerequisite for getting an interview, and we hired people who had the Google certificate. And I think for in-demand jobs, that's certainly going to be enough. I know that I learned zero practical knowledge while at university for the 3 years that I attended. And I did all of my practical learning on YouTube and at home, building my first company, Formlift. And as I was doing that, I learned significantly more than I ever would have had I continued for the other 3 years it would have taken me to finish doing school part-time. So for those people looking for in-demand jobs at a fraction, like a hundredth of a percentile of the cost of traditional university, I think more and more employers are dropping the undergrad requirement in order to get an interview. It's in 10 years, it's going, I think like what 50% require it now, it's going to go down to like.
Right. I mean, the thing is a university degree was never meant to be a job training thing. It was created as a very elite, abstract.
Well, it just depends, if you're training to be a lawyer or a doctor, that doesn't quite apply, does it, Sally?
Well, except that law school and medical school are, sort of separate follow-on institutions, and your undergrad study, started out as a liberal arts kind of a thing, and it was the province of the independently wealthy. I think that if you're not independently wealthy, you should still be able to get that type of education. But if what you want, if what you're focused on is, I want a job that pays well, your traditional undergraduate degree is pretty much irrelevant. I think that it's valuable to have the broader context of education. I don't regret the time that I spent going to school. But it isn't something that matters for being able to do a job well.
Yeah, I just think we live in exciting times when it comes to education. I only know when I was running a business in the 90s that under New Labour, under Tony Blair, they expanded university access enormously, and it was done partially for cynical political and for higher principles. You normally get that in politics. There's normally a bit of cynical factor mixed in with a more higher principle combined. And the cynical thing is they just wanted to get a lot of young people off the unemployment roll, what was a quick, easy way of doing that? Expand higher education and push them all into universities. You know, had the effect. It reduced youth unemployment quite dramatically. The actual quality of the courses and the outcomes weren't so good, but that was the political. The more higher thing was to expand higher education in England and Wales and Scotland to a much broader realm of the population.
Well, it's, you know, that when I was in England, they had pretty much just switched, you know, to the polyversities. And that was basically a political move to say there were, you know, more people in university because, you know, the stats didn't look so good. But so all the polytechnics where you went to learn job-related skills were suddenly rebranded as universities. And, you know, I don't know that that's a good move in practical terms because, you know, a place to go to learn job skills is a good thing to have and to maintain that mission. Anyway, I'm all in favor of, you know, Google's initiatives to, you know, help train people for these, you know, particular jobs.
Yes. So, Stephen, do you think more like, I think also Apple have been murmuring that they're going to be entering the higher education. I think, you know, these big tech companies, when they've got these enormous piles of money, they've got to look at really big markets to invest to make a difference to their bottom line, you know. So the two big inefficient industries in America are education and medicine, isn't it? So I think that Amazon, Apple, even face all the big Walmart, all those that got big piles of money must be looking at those two industry sectors to try and disrupt them. Would you agree with that, Stephen?
You mean from an education standpoint? Or?
Well, I think education and medicine are two big white whales, aren't they? They're just ripe for disruption, aren't they? Both of them, really, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think anything that's been around for more than 20 years is ripe for disruption right now, regardless of what it is. I think there's a part of me that kind of struggles still with this idea of you get this certification. Sure, it's more efficient, it's more cost effective, but at the end of the day, it's kind of just doing what college has done. Like, you have to fulfill this set of requirements, and then you get this piece of paper, and then you're able to do these jobs. Like, sure, it's cheaper, sure, it's faster, so maybe it's better. But I think the whole mentality needs to shift away from a piece of paper and a course is what certifies you to more of what have you done? What problems have you thought through? What have you tried to do by yourself? Like, if you're hiring a developer and they've gone through college, but they've never developed a website before, or all they've done is a certificate program and they don't have like, oh, I developed this website for a friend's band and I developed this website for my personal blog. And, oh, I'm, you know, or if you're a social media person and they run an Instagram account for their pet, like, you want to see actual tangible things that they've done in the real world. And Google saying, oh, here's another alternative way to get a piece of paper, kind of feels like it's just cheaper and more efficient. So maybe that's a good thing, but it's not changing the overall, like, how we're actually thinking through how to hire people.
Well, right. I mean, it's, you know, are you hiring someone at the entry level, in which case you don't expect them to know a lot and they're going to learn things while they work. And anyway, technology changes very fast. Or are you hiring somebody that can demonstrate they understand some things about problem solving? And, you know, for that level, it can be helpful to have certain kinds of education that help you think that way. But if you have the experience that has taught you to think that way, that works equally well. I mean, you know, I remember telling my father about all the various exams involved in getting a PhD, that you've got, you know, language exams, you have qualifying exams, you have preliminary exams, and then you have the dissertation. And you know, my father's response was, so at the end of this, do you belong to the fraternity?
Belong to something. So, Spencer, you know, the only thing is, you know, the private university sector in the US, I don't know, similar outcomes have happened in other countries, but it didn't exactly work. It hasn't exactly worked out that well with the reputation of I'll just put it, the reputation of fully private universities in the US isn't fantastic as a totality. So it's going to be interesting. But on the other hand, it's obviously that the present system is ripe for disruption. It's just going to be interesting to see where that. I think it probably. My only guess, it will come from Apple, Google, somebody that's got a lot of money, but also got some credibility to some level.
All right. Well, I wonder if we're heading back to the, basically the kind of company town model.
I think it's the opposite. I think it's
Company store.
This is an Emperor's New Clothes story. So at some point, higher education, not dissimilar from a company town, but for a different reason, became how do we train people to be mindless cogs in our industrial wheel?
Well, the reason that K-12 education became that was exactly the company towns.
Right.
That was where it started.
Because they needed to teach kids the basic ways, essentially, as they went up, how to function in our factories. And then what happened was post-World War II and with the other degrees and the GI Bill and everything else, they realized that to solve unemployment, we need to allow for other agencies and other larger companies to have people willing to say, if you get this thing that we'll pay for or discount, you'll come to work for us for 35 years, you'll get your pension, your gold watch, you'll retire, you'll have your house in Levittown, everything will be great. And for my parents' generation and maybe grandfather's generation, that's the truth, it worked. Now we're seeing that the cracks in that foundation come out. And here's what's really changing, and this is part of it. The George Bush II presidency allowed corporations to realize they could package up educational loans like the mortgage loans and sell them to third parties. They compounded that by making them bankruptcy proof, which is what has essentially created this gigantic bubble of debt that's hanging over. The universities that were otherwise like University of Illinois, state schools who were there for a public service of creating cogs and wheels decided, you mean we can sell our $600 a semester education for $6,000 or $16,000 or $60,000 and we can become like those Harvards? And they did. They marketed the hell out of it. They spent the money on building up all this infrastructure and everything else. But then the reality didn't work out. There aren't no 50-year, 35-year jobs and gold watches. And now kids are coming into the second of all these recessions and Now the final threat is the pandemic reveals that you can do more from home on Zoom and you can learn from a remote place for $300 or self-taught a skill that will get you a $90,000 a year job. So now the universities are in an utter panic because right now they can't even send the kids to school this semester because they're all getting sick and bringing it home to mom and dad who are paying those bills and so forth. So what's going to happen is, who knows? For sure what's going to happen is, though, the universities are going to have to drastically change their marketing and offer because the only thing that they can tangibly do to compete with things like this is the experience of college. In other words, like living with people your own age and making mistakes and screwing up. That was the college experience for almost everybody in an undergrad. And as Sally rightly pointed out, I went on to higher degrees. I was a psychology speech comm major or rhetoric major in college. I used to say I majored in unemployment because there was no value to that at all other than I spent 4 years learning how to be an adult where I ran a couple businesses and I made money more than the cost of college because it was $600 a semester. But today to go to University of Illinois or something and come out with $300,000 in debt for a liberal arts degree in psychology, that would be insane. So who knows what's happening, but definitely what is going to happen. There's no way they're putting that genie back in the bottle. There's no way that the state schools or the liberal arts colleges or the small, like the part-time schools are going to be able to afford to pretend that coming here is some magic trick that's going to get you anything. Instead, they're going to have to do this kind of shenanigan or offer a campus reality experience where you come here and you live for $5,000 a year with other kids while you're taking your Zoom classes or something. And I think that's exciting because Peter Thiel was talking about this a long time ago. And look at all the successful entrepreneurs. They all dropped out of Harvard or something for good reason. The skills matter. But now the field is leveled to prove that skills are all that matter. Like literally nobody.
Well,
did-
yes. I mean, the thing
Well,
is,
I think,
but all the startup
yeah,
founders who
Sally,
dropped
can I
out of
just-
Stanford have the connections at Stanford and
that's
Harvard.
That's the part that is a value of the college
Yeah,
experience.
right.
Like I know you are my alumni. I do
Yeah,
this.
so Adrian, do you not feel that you got any benefit of mixing with other people that were interested in the same things as you?
That experience is non-replaceable. So, I mean, I joined a fraternity. I was one of the boys. Like,
Was
I
you?
had a great time.
You were one of the boys, were you?
Yeah, I had a great time. I learned a lot about politics because, you know, fraternities are basically just all politics. Our own little mini boardroom, and so a lot of you know, NPLs.
Metabolizing alcohol.
I learned a lot about business while I was there. I mean, fraternities are basically just, you know, we got to make money somehow. So sales and where to find the money was a big thing I learned there. A lot of practical application came out of that house versus out of the university in of itself. So the college experience, there's certainly something to be said for that. But a lot of people don't do the college experience anymore because they're more concerned about the college grade. I mean, our fraternity was not,
Or they're just more
necessarily-
concerned about the college loan.
If I can finish, that's okay.
It's too expensive to dick around anymore. It wasn't like a load on
Well,
your.
let Adrian finish, will you? Go on, Adrian.
Is that okay? So, I mean,
Sorry, Adrian.
I adopted the mentality of C's get degrees. As I was going through college, I was like, you know, I'll get the work done. I'll get good enough, and I'll get my piece of paper because I'm focused on other stuff like my first business, and then I eventually just dropped out because I'm like, I can do better things with my time. But the college experience was definitely worthwhile. But a lot of people that I knew and a lot of friends who I went to the same university with for my high school, 'cause, you know, it's like down the block, forfeited essentially their college experience and their social life in favor of being super stressed out about, I need to get a 4.0 GPA in order to be qualified to do anything remotely worthwhile after college. Because that's the way that people believe, or that's at least what we're taught to believe in high school and school before that, is that, you know, it's 4.0 GPA or bust. So that the college experience is therefore diluted by that mentality of people going into school. I was raised a little bit differently, so I didn't necessarily have that mentality. I was busy doing other things, but a lot of people did. So if the continuation of like same old and the same marketing and the same mentality is instilled into new students entering university, the college experience isn't even a valid selling point because they don't believe that it's worthwhile. So that's the rub.
Yeah, I think you made some great points.
Yeah, well, I went to college with people who, you know, went to the parties, had the experience, graduated magna cum laude. So, you know, it was, there was more emphasis on being able to think for yourself. But yeah, the problem is you come out of most high schools with this be a good little drone, get the grades, and we'll reward you mentality. And it doesn't equip you to think for yourself. Because they don't want you to think for yourself. They want you to do what you tell them. And I found this was actually more true when I was teaching in England than when I was teaching in America. It was like pulling teeth to get them to have opinions.
Opinions? You don't have opinions when you're English. God's sake, that's rude. That is. There we go. All right. Let's go on to our recommendation of the week. And I've been a bit lazy, but I am going to put some links. I've been doing a little bit of rereading of the French Revolution, a period that fascinates me. Rousseau, the national guillotine, the national razor.
Guillotine.
Yes, the guillotine.
Guillotine.
Guillotine, yes.
I'm sorry.
However, American.
I'll pronounce it the English way. God. I don't know. And I'll be putting some links into some great resources because they say history doesn't repeat itself, and it doesn't, but in some ways it does. And I think I think we might be entering a period of similar outcomes to some extent. Spencer, got any recommendation for the listeners and viewers? And please put them all in chat, please, panel.
This week, one of the companies that we keep talking about, Elementor, essentially shit the bed. And they did a unwarranted, unprepared...
Did you say shit the bed or shift the bed?
Shit the bed.
Right.
Dropped a deuce in the bed.
Right.
Because they released this version 3.0 and didn't prepare anybody in any reasonable way for how badly coded this was or what it meant. And so what happened was everybody woke up, and this is something I had suggested we talked about this week, but essentially why auto updates is not such a great idea is that like everybody who had Elementor just assumed, hey, everything's been great, updated it, and 3.0 broke just about everybody's normal functionality. And it had two layers because you had the regular plugin, the pro plugin, and to roll back meant you had to know the combination in the right order and what to do or what was wrong. And it went from 3.0 to 3.03 in 2 days, and they still haven't really fixed it all. But the point is, Kingster, I think a host, sponsor of this show, had a great article on what to do to roll back to older versions of plugins and so forth. And
yeah, I would imagine their support have had a few requirements.
Yeah, this would have been probably very useful because there are actually plugins in place that allow you, if it's in the repository for sure, but even in the plugins themselves, there's ways to roll back stuff. So this is a good article for anybody who has clients or has sort of found themselves in that, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, without necessarily doing what we always do anyway, which is to go to an earlier backup. This is just literally the plugin rollback, not the whole site.
Well, this is security fixes, or it's come on our radar. We don't update every plugin. We have a set schedule. But we just learnt the hard way that it's best to give any kind of update to any kind of plugin at least 3 to 4 days.
Oh, for sure.
Because
WordPress
yeah, because otherwise, you after you've been bitten in the backside a few times, you learn by it. You know, Stephen, have you got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, I'm just gonna recommend the Updraft backup plugin for that same exact reason that Spencer was talking about. When people F up their sites, aka Elementor, we had a lot of support tickets coming in from people on Elementor, and like Elementor fixed problems, but then it caused problems in other plugins that were relying on Elementor. It was just like this convoluted mess of like plugins updating plugins. When you have a backup plugin that you're writing that's reliable and good, sometimes the best thing to do is just revert to like a 4-hour-old backup and everything's good again.
It's all lovely and back to normal. So nice. John, have you got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, what I put in was a article on probabilistic thinking in SEO, which is it encourages people to think about or try and calculate like the probability that some action that you take in SEO is going to have a positive effect. But really interesting article, makes you think. So go check that out.
Yeah, we all got this thing that actually doing something will actually solve something. Doesn't always work out that way, actually. Adrian, have you got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, I did a webinar yesterday with Ryan Moore from Uncanny Owl. They make the Uncanny Automator plugin, and it's currently available. The replay is currently available on our Facebook page, which I've linked. It's also going to be made available later today on YouTube. And it's a pretty cool hour. Ryan shows us how to do a lot of cool things with
He's
automation.
a bright guy, isn't he?
It's a super sweet plugin that they got, super sweet tech. And I learned a lot, and I think whoever watches it will also learn a lot. So I think it's incredibly worthwhile.
Yeah, it was a good webinar. You did a good job. Right. Sally, got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
Yes. Steve Levitt of Freakonomics fame has a new podcast called People I Mostly Admire. And his first interview is with Steven Pinker, and there is a lot of good stuff in there about like how people think and why people are like so bad at judging certain things. And so I've put the link to it on Stitcher, but you know, it should be in whatever podcast app. I don't think it has its own website at this point because it's pretty new. But but very enjoyable, you know, in your copious spare time. I mean, I listen to a lot of different podcasts, and it's hard to keep up, and harder to keep up when I'm at home more, because driving is a good opportunity to listen to podcasts.
It is. That's one of the problems of the pandemic. No, don't do so much driving, do you?
Yes.
There you go. Right, panel. Thanks, listeners and viewers. I just want to promote a webinar that me and Adrian are going to be doing on Tuesday, the 1st of September at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's going to be about how to use marketing automation with your membership site. Adrian's going to be going through 3 major principles. Hopefully, I'm going to be hosting it to the required standard that Adrian is looking for. But it should be a laugh, and I won't be interrupting Adrian. I will be allowing him to explain to you. So it should be a great thing to join. How do you sign up for it? It's quite easy. Go to the WP-Tonic website. On the main navigation is a big button that says free webinar. You click it and you'll be able to sign up. We'll see you next week with another great roundtable show and a great panel. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.